Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into something you've probably driven right next to 1,000 times without really thinking about it. We're talking about the hidden logistics, the unrelenting physics, and the strict mathematical rules that keep those 80,000-pound highway giants moving safely right next to us at 65 miles per hour. When you see a massive commercial truck barreling down the interstate, you're not just looking at a big vehicle, you're actually looking at a masterclass in applied physics.
So picture this for a second. Have you ever looked at a massive flatbed truck on the highway? You know, the ones carrying huge concrete pipes or stacked lumber, and wondered how on earth all that cargo stays perfectly in place at such high speeds? Or how a tractor-trailer manages to navigate a sharp highway curve without just immediately tipping over? Well, I'll tell you right now, it isn't magic, and it definitely isn't just good luck. It all comes down to a really precise set of rules governing weight, tension, and balance.
The stakes out there on the highway are incredibly high. That's exactly why the Commercial Driver Manual outlines strict, uncompromising regulations for securing cargo to avert total disaster. The manual puts it super plainly, stating, loose cargo that falls off a vehicle can cause traffic problems and others can be hurt or killed. But it actually goes beyond just the cars driving behind the truck, right? Loose cargo can also crash forward during a hard stop, which instantly becomes a lethal hazard to the truck driver themselves.
So, to understand how these disasters are prevented every single day, we're going to break this explainer down into 5 quick sections. The stakes of cargo logistics, the physics of weight distribution, the strict math of tie-downs, dealing with shifting cargo, and finally, the driver's ultimate responsibility. Let's get right into it.
Section 1. The stakes of cargo logistics and why properly secured cargo is literally a matter of life and death. Before a commercial driver even turns the ignition key, an immense amount of responsibility rests on their shoulders, because if cargo is loaded incorrectly or left unsecured, it instantly transforms from everyday freight into a lethal hazard. The dangers here are completely multifaceted. Obviously, there's a huge danger to others on the road from falling debris, but there is also severe danger to the driver during quick stops. If an 80,000-pound rig has to slam on its brakes, any unbraced cargo is going to just keep moving forward with terrifying momentum. Plus, improperly loaded cargo causes serious vehicle damage from overloading and can make safe steering completely impossible, which leads to a total loss of vehicle control.
Moving on to Section 2, Physics of Weight Distribution, Mastering the Center of Gravity. This is where cargo securement becomes a highly visual puzzle. Gravity dictates exactly where every single pound of cargo must go, and the absolutely crucial point here is the center of gravity. That's basically the point where the cargo's weight is most concentrated. Now, piling heavy cargo way too high makes a truck dangerously top-heavy. In fact, tests have actually shown that trucks with a high center of gravity can roll over while driving at the exact posted speed limit for a curve. Wild, right? So to prevent rollovers, a driver is constantly fighting to keep that center of gravity as close to the asphalt as physically possible. Looking at this graphic, the physics in action becomes super obvious. You see the wrong way to load cargo, piling it high, stacking it heavily at the top, or leaving it entirely uncentered. That off-center load is practically begging to tip the vehicle over on a curve. But then you look at the right way. You absolutely must distribute cargo as evenly and closely to the center as possible, always placing the heaviest parts underneath the lightest ones. This low, centered weight distribution is literally the primary defense against a devastating highway rollover. Now, weight distribution isn't just about top and bottom. Front-to-back balance is just as crucial. If a driver shifts too much weight toward the rear of the trailer, they create what we call underloaded front axles. When those front steering wheels don't have enough weight pressing them down into the pavement, steering becomes wildly unsafe and unresponsive. On the flip side, if weight shifts too far forward, you get underloaded drive axles at the back. Without enough weight on those driving wheels, they lose traction. They'll just spit helplessly, making it incredibly difficult to keep the truck moving, especially in bad weather. Balance is absolutely everything here. Section 3. Strict Math of Tie-Downs, the formulas for securing freight. So, now that we understand the visual physics of weight distribution, let's look at where this visual puzzle meets hard, uncompromising math. On flatbeds, where cargo is completely exposed to the wind and elements, securement relies heavily on strict math. The foundational equation here is known as the 1-for-10 rule. This federal regulation dictates that cargo must have at least one tie-down strap or chain for every 10 feet of its length. Simple enough, right? So a 30-foot load is going to require a minimum of 3 tie-downs spaced evenly across its length to ensure it doesn't pivot or slide off. But here's the kicker. The most absolute, non-negotiable mathematical rule to remember is 2. No matter how small a piece of cargo is, seriously, even if it's only 2 feet long, if it's sitting on a flatbed, it must be secured by a minimum of 2 tie-downs. One strap is simply never enough. Why? Because if that single strap snaps or even just loosens up, the cargo is instantly unmoored. The rule of 2 guarantees built-in redundancy, which is a total lifesaver.
Looking at this diagram, you can see the tie-downs distributed evenly across the cargo, perfectly following that 1 for 10 rule. But the math actually goes a lot deeper than just counting straps. Drivers also have to calculate tension. Federal regulations require that the combined strength of all the tie-downs, what they call the aggregate working load limit, has to be at least 1/2 times the total weight of the cargo itself. So if you're hauling a 40,000-pound piece of machinery, your straps and chains combined must be officially rated to hold back at least 20,000 pounds of force. It really is an invisible web of mathematical tension holding our highways together.
Okay, Section 4, dealing with shifting cargo, the variables of live and liquid loads. Let's see what happens when the math gets complicated, because the cargo absolutely refuses to sit still.
Things like dry bulk, hanging meat, and livestock all introduce highly dangerous variables. Dry bulk tanks have a very high center of gravity to begin with, and the sand or powder inside can easily shift all to one side. Hanging meat, like suspended beef in a refrigerated truck, creates this highly unstable pendulum effect, swaying violently when the truck takes a sharp curve. And livestock? Well, they are literally live variables. Animals actively walk around inside the trailer, and worse, they physically lean into curves together like they're riding a roller coaster. This instantly throws off that perfectly calculated center of gravity we talked about earlier, making rollovers incredibly likely if the driver isn't taking corners at a total crawl.
Section 5, the driver's ultimate responsibility, vigilance on the highway. To wrap up this explainer, we really have to look at the human element here. Because the formulas, the math, and the physics, they only work if they are constantly verified by the human behind the wheel. Securing a load is definitely not a set-it-and-forget-it process. Drivers must maintain a rigorous schedule. They have to physically inspect their cargo and straps at 0 hours before they even leave the parking lot. Then, because road vibrations actually cause straps to settle and stretch out, they have to pull over and recheck everything within the first 50 miles. After that, the timeline dictates another full inspection every 3 hours or 150 miles on the road, plus during every single rest break.
And this brings us to the absolute ultimate truth of the commercial driving profession. Listen to this. Even if a totally different crew of warehouse workers loaded the trailer, placed all the pallets, and tightened up those initial straps, the commercial driver sitting behind the wheel remains fully, legally, and morally responsible for its safety. Period. If it falls off, it is on the driver. They have to be the ones to recognize overloads, spot poorly balanced weight, and guarantee that the cargo doesn't obscure their view.
So what does this all mean for us? Well, next time you're on your daily commute and you pass a massive flatbed roaring down the highway, take a closer look. Look for that low center of gravity. Count the tie-downs as you drive by. Check for the 1 for 10 rule and that mandatory minimum of 2 straps. I promise you will never look at a truck the same way again, and you'll definitely have a newfound respect for the incredibly strict physics and invisible math being executed every single day to keep us all safe on the road. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and hey, keep your eyes peeled out there on the highway.